Hey everyone, this is Mike Matsuno. This is the Man in Japan channel. If you're out there, I hope you can hear me. How's the audio? If anyone can comment that the audio is okay, that you can hear me pretty good, video okay. The main thing is the audio though. So if you can just comment, just if the audio is going well or not. Um, Japan is now in a heat wave, as some of you may have seen on the news. Today it's going to reach between, I think here in Kyoto, Nabe, it's going to be about 35, 36 degrees, which is like mid 90s and things. But with the high humidity, it's going to reach somewhere, over the lower hundreds. So it's not a comfortable time. And as I said before in a couple of the videos, I think it's important that you really decide when you're going to come to Japan. And I would highly recommend that summer, if you decide to come in July, August, September, that Hokkaido is probably the best place. And, I know a lot of people and a lot of teachers and educators who can only come in the summer. So they're going to do that, I call it the Silk Road route between Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and sometimes Hiroshima. And they do that in the summer. Just so you know, it's really hot. Now, if you're staying in a hotel, of course, it's not a problem. You have air conditioning in the hotel, of course, at nights, and you don't have what is called netaya. Netaya are sweltering or sleepless nights, is what they call. It's about 25 degrees centigrade, and when it reaches that, they give it the name netaya, and it means basically it's so uncomfortable that you can't sleep. I remember when I was young and in Japan and living in a dormitory in Kyoto that had no air conditioning. And when Netaya came, and sometimes it would go for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, it was miserable. And I remember in the dormitory taking between 7 to 10 cold showers every day. And that was the only way to cool down. I remember having 3 fans. I'm sure the electricity bill was high, but the dorm was paying 3 fans. And then there was no screen on the windows. So we would open the windows, of course, but no screens. So the mosquitoes would come in. So I had like 3 different mosquito coils in the room at strategic places. And then I had 3 fans blowing on me with the door open, just in underwear. It was a guy's dorm, so it didn't really matter, even though, girls were coming in and out sometimes. But yeah, it was hot. Anyway, I hope that you are hearing this. If you are, it would be nice if you would comment to just let me know that you are hearing me. Okay, so today I decided, my last live was about what I really admire about Japan, safety, customer service, kindness, hospitality, non-violence, non-conflict. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about things that frustrate me in Japan. And I don't want it to sound like a gripe session, but I'm just gonna be, honest with you. I've been in Japan. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Matsuno. I have the Man in Japan channel. If you're interested, please subscribe. And it's down in the description. And usually I try to introduce things about Japan. What at least is interesting to me. It's not maybe always interesting to everyone, but so I'd like to introduce. Oh, thank you, Tristan. Greetings from Illinois. Great. Wow, up late. So thanks, Tristan, for joining us. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about things that actually kind of frustrate me. And I've been in Japan over 30 years, so I kind of have an idea. I've studied at graduate school. I've taught at the university. I have worked in companies, so I kind of have a general, pretty good idea. I don't want to say I'm the expert because it's too hard. Japan is too wide and very general in some respects, but I can give you a kind of a common sense idea. So I'll just start off with things that maybe bother me at times. In Japan, a lot of times people are not able to make a decision. So like if you go to like City Hall or something and you ask something that there's no precedent, and a lot of times foreigners are asking like something different, right? Because foreigners are always thinking. They're like always thinking of some angle, right? They're independent thinkers, they're trying to figure out the best situation and how to make it best for them. And can I do this? What if I do this? There's always this kind of hypothetical. Well, In Japan, they're not used to that because everybody pretty much follows the rules. So when they do that, it throws everything into turmoil, and those people on the front lines especially cannot make the decision. And sometimes it has to go up the food chain, basically. So what happens is decision making goes up and then it comes down. So you won't have a decision right away. And so sometimes that's really hard, and sometimes it takes a long time. And you never know where it is in the system. So be prepared that if you plan to live in Japan, or you have to sometimes do something with the visa or something, that it could take quite a while. Another thing that also kind of frustrates me at times is that, well, it doesn't really frustrate me, but it's one of my observations, is that Japan is not able to do good public relations or promotion of themselves. And I think that has hurt Japan all the way around in business. It's hurt them. I was surprised that they got the Olympics in Tokyo in 2020 because they're not that good at promotion or presentation. I'm sure they, of course, if they have to hire out, some big advertising company. And I remember the main speaker for the Tokyo Olympics was a French Japanese. She was half French, half Japanese, and she was the speaker. She was a very attractive lady, and she spoke well, of course, English. At the same time, she spoke in using the word omotenashi, hospitality. Anyway, but again, I think Japan has lost a lot of business and contracts due to the inability to promote or PR themselves. And one of the skills are presentation skills. And I have taught students, of course, and I'm so strict about presentation skills. And my students come out pretty good when they're finished with the course. Not, now that I'm working at a company, and I worked in another couple of companies before that, when there's presentations, the presentations are not good. And I always think in my mind, my students could do better than these people, because most of them have never had presentation classes. And so it's really difficult for Japanese. Hi, Felipe from Belgium. Thanks for joining us. So it's really just difficult for them to do presentations. So again, this is a need that they have that no one seems to think is that important, except me maybe. So again, the idea of being able to promote themselves, again, it's really kind of something that I think all of Japan should work on. And now you see debate classes in some of the high schools, and you see some speech courses that have come up in junior high and high school. Very few though, because a lot of times there's no teachers to teach them, because the teachers themselves have not learned how to present well. Or like you look at a Steve Jobs, or you look at someone who can put up one word and then sell it. Those are the great models that Japan really doesn't have. Another thing that kind of frustrates me is, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, is that the Japanese are the best rule followers, and everybody is following the rules, which compared to like the United States is many times a good thing. It's like everybody trying to get around the rules. Not everyone, but a lot of people try to get around the rules. In Japan, they follow the rules. But that also means that no one takes a risk. And that takes me to my other point. My next point is that Japanese are not risk takers. So everyone follows the rules, everything is in control. But the moment something kind of goes off, or there's no precedent, then it sends things into kind of a turmoil, because everyone's so used to just following the rules. And when you think about it, rule following is easy, right? Because if you like work for the city hall, and someone comes to you and says they want to do this, but it's against the rules, all you have to do is say, oh, it's the rule. You don't even have to think, right? You don't have to try and figure out a way to get, help them out or whatever. You just say it's the rule. So in a way, there's no critical thinking or problem solving involved. It's just very simple. It's very easy. It keeps everybody kind of on, in track. A lot of times they don't want to make an exception. And the reason is because I know in their mind, they're thinking, if they make the exception for you, that means the next person that comes and the next person that comes, they're going to have to do the same. And there is the F word that stands in Japan. F-A-I-R, fair. The F word is fair in Japan, meaning that they always have to worry about being fair. So there's no more thinking about, oh, in this case, I can see why, something happened, or, it's the F word. And it's easy for them to stand on the rules and the F word of fair. And so that's the stance. And so sometimes it's hard to, work around and, step for them to step outside of those boundaries because of the rule following and the F word, fair. So, and if you look at it, it's a good way to keep society in control, right? Just have the rules, keep everything fair. Um, Again, I've asked many, many times, and I have a story about, I won't talk about it today, about how I lost my driver's license because of the renewal, that I didn't renew it on time. But on my license, it said Heisei 34, which is the old calendar before Reiwa. Before, there were two more, and it didn't sync with me. Yes, it was completely my responsibility to look it up on Google, or at least have it in mind, but I didn't. But when I went to argue my position, and not that I was going to convince them, but I thought I had a good argument, right? That it was only 2 months over the 6 month, normally 6 months they let you go, like a grace period, but it was 8 months. And then I said, I was driving in Japan with this license, so, but anyway, no go. It was like I went, I thought I had a good argument, but again, I just had to accept. And now I have to go back to the United States and stay 90 days so I can come back to Japan to apply to exchange my American license for a Japanese license and start from zero again. But I don't have to take a written test or a driving test because I got the old Japanese license, but they won't let me use that, as that I was driving the whole 8 years before this. And so all I wanted to say is that I'm sorry I made a mistake. I will pay the fine, but I just no. But anyway, so yeah, that was my fault. But it was one of those times that I thought, oh, I had an argument, right? So getting to the idea of following the rules, right? Another weird thing about Japan that kind of bothers me at times is that, again, it's not all bad. Many times it's a good thing, is that no one wants to make waves. Like the idea is to get along. So there's, it's like the group before the individual, which in many times, especially when you compare it to America and what's going on right now, great, man. Love Japan for that. Everyone kind of, abstains, and they do basically usually what's best for the group before the individual. And but on the reverse side of that, that sometimes is hard, is that if you want to make change in Japan, if you want to give a new idea, if you want to do something different, if you want to kind of be yourself, like let's say I want to wear a aloha shirt to work because everybody's wearing short sleeve now, I go in with an aloha shirt, that would never go. I mean, I used to do this at the university, but I was kind of the boss then. But now that I'm just on the bottom of the starfish doo-doo, I'm at the bottom of the food chain, I would never do that. But again, the idea is that the Japanese have a proverb. It's deru kugi wa utaeru. The standing nail gets pounded down. So if you stand up in Japan, you will get pounded down. And yes, it was very, very common or normal 10, 20 years ago, but it still is very strong in today's society, that people will not really stand out because they worry about what other people say. They worry about getting the hammer to them. So people don't take risk usually, or don't step out of the rails. But that means that it's hard to get new ideas or new ways of thinking. And because of the way the Japanese system is set up, like a samurai system where it's top down, like when we used to have meetings, when we have meetings at the company, if the normally run by the top person, right? Whether they're bucho or chicho or kacho, let's like section chief or department chief. If they say their opinion, no one under them is going to disagree or even put up an option or even say anything like, oh, what about this? Or what do you think that this is also possible? It's just done. So when I was the director of the International Center at a university in Osaka, what I used to do is I used to start with the youngest person in the meeting of my staff, maybe Hiraoka-san. She was a second year person. I'd say, Hiraoka-san, what do you think in this situation? And then work my way up the ladder. That way, the newest person would get their say, and we could hear their ideas, because again, especially with universities, you're dealing with students who are closest to that person's age. They probably have the best idea or some wisdom that we don't really know. But again, at companies, it's not run like that, you know. And again, my leadership style was completely different from Japan. And I think that's another thing that I sometimes struggle with is leadership style in Japan. A lot of it is more like taskmaster. Like they just do the you know, they just assign the documents or they just assign. It's not necessarily leadership or raising, you know, young people or raising staff. And not every place in the world or not every place in the United States does this either, of course. But there's still a tendency, I think, more in the West to the idea of leadership. In Japan, I don't really feel that there's not many people who have that leadership skill. And maybe because I'm looking at it from a Westerner's point of view, that I'm thinking like, oh yeah, they don't do it the way the West does. But I do believe that my style, more of a Western style, when I was 10 years at the as the International Center Director, with my staff, was successful. And when I left, they sent me a little thing and they said, oh, you're the best boss. Now, you know, they could be saying that. But till this day, I have connection with all of them still. And still, I don't know, half of them at least still say to me that I was the best boss they had. Not patting myself on the back, but basically saying that I think it worked and we were very successful. But when I try to teach or try to suggest to, you know, some of the Japanese bosses, it's like a foreign concept. You know, it's like they hear me, but they don't really understand what I'm saying. Another thing in the office that's interesting is what I call inshin. It's called inshin denshin, which is like telepathy. That everybody in the office knows what's going on. They're like at the same wavelength, and without it being spoken, there's no notice, there's no sign, there's no email, there's no message, but they know certain things. And so, of course, me being the foreigner, like now I'm the only foreigner in the office out of 50. I never know what's going on. Like, you know, like when the president is leaving, we all have to stand up or, you know, and say, "Otsukare-sama deshita," or whether we have to wear a necktie or short sleeve or long sleeve, you know. There's all these rules, unspoken rules that everyone knows except me. And when I asked some of the Japanese staff, I said, "How did you know?" I said, "Was there an email, or you know, how come?" Because sometimes I've gone in without a tie to the president, the management meeting, and been very embarrassed. No one said anything to. I mean, Japanese are so nice in that way. No one says, "Hey, where's your tie?" No one says that, but they all know. So in a way, it's worse because you don't know you're doing it until after I come out of the meeting, looking around, going, "Hey, how come I'm the only one?" And I got to ask one of the lady staff people who works next to me, and she said, "Oh yeah, you're supposed to wear a necktie." I said, "But we didn't have to wear a necktie. Went from May or something." And they said, "Oh, but the president wants people to wear a necktie." I said, "I didn't know." So again, there's this thing, you know, there's something in the office that Japanese can sense. And when I asked the Japanese, they said, "Oh, it's like just watch and follow, I guess." And I am watching, but I guess I'm not perceptive enough to pick up, but they're picking it all up. You know, there must be like things in the air that they're picking up that I cannot. But even after 30 years in Japan, I am still not at that inching, denching level that I can pick up, and I still make a lot of mistakes. So, yeah, that was frustrating at times, but it's kind of funny now when you look back. If any of you have any comments or like what frustrates you about Japan, please list them in the comments. If you do, then I could talk about them because that's the whole point of doing a live is involving you. I just gave you some examples of what frustrate me. So I thought maybe now if you have things that bother or frustrate you, you know, whether it's traveling or living or whatever, studying in Japan, please put them in the comments and I will try to address them as best as I can. While you folks are thinking about it and hopefully going to enter something. Another thing that I think that it's at a larger scale that I think is hard is that immigration in Japan. The Japanese are very strict about immigration and amnesty. And it's I don't think it's a good thing because it doesn't help their society as far as diversify. Japan needs diversity. At least Mike Matsuno thinks so. I'm sure most Japanese don't understand or don't really want such diversity because again, there's the fear, right? That you let in immigration. With good things come also negative aspects of immigration, right? Whether it's drugs or human trafficking or or whatever it is, crime increases and things. But on the good side, like for example in the United States, if you think about it, Silicon Valley was basically built by immigrants, whether they're first or second generation immigrants that came in, whether to study or they came for a postdoc and they got a great job and they ended up staying and made America their home. And I think that's the difference between America and Japan, is that America is willing to say, make America your home. I mean, they always say it's a land of immigrants, right? Supposedly. So make America your home. But in Japan, it's more of the sense that come and live and work and travel and study in Japan. But when you're finished, please go home. It's like, they worry maybe that they don't want their social system to be taking care of, welfare system, that they don't want to have to take care of people who maybe need support but cannot work or something. I mean, but it's not only Japan, right? Thailand, like that, although they have very more liberal types of visas, they still at the end want people to go home. So it's still, there's a cap, like 20 years or whatever it is, I think, even in Thailand. So yeah, most countries are like that. So I'm not saying it's only Japan, but that's a big difference I see between America and Japan. Okay, Tristan wrote, let's see. Let's see. Tristan wrote here. When I lived in Japan, I forgot to bring my hanko to the bank, and even though I had all my documents, they said that they couldn't help me without the hanko, so I had to go all the way home to get it. Yes, hanko society. Now, I don't know if you've seen my video about the used car that I bought, that I didn't have a hanko and I had to go and make a hanko. Well, if you're interested, it's on my channel about buying a used car in Japan. I had to get a hanko too because, okay, this is my story, is that back 1980s when I was first here, I had an account with Mitsubishi Bank, which became UFJ today. And Mitsubishi Bank, at that time, they're trying to be more progressive. So they shifted from a hanko to a sign for foreigners. And I was so happy, right? Because that's what we do. So I had that. And then I left Japan. I kept the bank account. I returned to Japan. I still was able to use that account. And they, surprisingly, because I thought Japan would change this, they let me in, they grandfathered me in so I can still use a sign. So until today, I am one of the few people in Japan who can use a signature, not a hanko. But that's only at the bank. If I were to buy a car or a house, I would still need to get a hanko. And like Tristan has said, is that without your hanko, you're out, And not only that, you have to go to City Hall and get the paper that says that hanko is your hanko, because you have gone through the process of registering so you have to register your hanko at the City Hall. And after you do that, when it's time to buy, you go to the City Hall and you get that paper, pay 300 yen, take that paper with your hanko to the used car or the car dealership or to buy a house. It's normally for large purchases. Outside of that, it's bank if you don't have a signature style type. And, so again, yes, Justin, very, very true that the hanko is everything in Japan. And if you watch my video, the odd thing is that it's more, again, there's no like critical thinking, in this, where my hanko I had a hanko made by the university, and that's what I had it as a backup, but I was using signature for the bank, so I really didn't need it. I had never bought a used car until that time. And when I did, I took my hanko there. Then the Gullivers, the used car dealership, said, I have to register that at City Hall because I never registered it. So I took it with me up to City Hall, and then I went to register. They looked at it, they go, it's chipped. It was a little bit like cut, a piece had broken off. But then I said to them, hey, that's even better because it's chipped, so nobody can copy this hanko, right? Because you don't want anybody copying your hanko. And they go, no, it's broken. But I said, I understand, but it's only on the frame, the around. It's not the Matsuno, it's the frame. And I think that's better. Oh, no. Again, this is the rule following, right? So everybody, okay. So I said, okay. So I had to go and make a new hanko. Cost me, I think, 4,000 yen, $40, 4,400, about $40. And then I had to go up to City Hall and register that. And this one says Matsuno in alphabet. It's the simplest thing to copy. Any criminal could easily copy this. And so at the hanko making counter, I asked the lady, I said, okay, look at these two. Which one is more difficult to copy? I said, the one that has a chip, it's not on my name. It's only on the frame. What do you think? And of course, then she said, oh yeah, this one nobody could copy. But you cannot register a hanko that has any kind of like what do you call it, defect or damage to it. I was like, oh. So I had to go and do it. So the hanko I have now, that if I were to buy another used car or house, which I'm not, but it's just my letters in capital letters, Matsuno. Anybody could copy it. So, Tristan, there you have it. Yeah, hanko. So again, if any of you are thinking about Japan, you will need a hanko even at the bank. I'm pretty sure. Okay, so if there's any other things you folks want to say, let me know. Any other thing about your frustrations in Japan or things that you've dealt with? If not, I'll just keep moving on. Let me see. I lost the paper here. Excuse me 1 second. 1 second. I'm sorry about this. Okay. So what has happened, I believe, in Japan is that I think the biggest problem for Japan is that they are using old systems and which haven't evolved. So basically what I'm saying is that after the war, after they lost the war, the next 50 years, the systems they had, the work system, the university system, the education system and everything was perfect for what they needed. And that's why they became the so-called economic miracle up until maybe the 80s and 90s, right? And then you have kind of a decade, they call it the lost decade, right? Economically for Japan. But now it hasn't evolved. And so they're still trying to use the old methods with the new 21st century. And with the social media and the internet and everything coming on, it's a totally different game. But Japan, especially the politicians and a lot of the older people, and again, Japan is old, right? Because still about 38% of Japan are over 60. And normally in Japan, most of the leaders, if you watch Japanese news, all the leaders, the politicians, most of them are old, right? So they're old. So hold on a second, excuse me. So they're old. So what happens is the thinking is old, of course. There's very few people who have overseas experience. There's only one politician I know. What's his name? Taro Kono-san. He graduated from Georgetown and he ran for prime minister, but he lost to Kishida. But he might be the only one I think would have any hope of making some changes. But everybody else, no one. They're all Tokyo University graduates, right? They're like the elite. Kono-san wasn't, but if you're not in that family, but again, no one has studied abroad, so or have overseas experience. So you basically have a kind of an old way of thinking, and now in the 21st century, and as Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a change is the sign of insanity, right? Constantly repeating. That's where Japan is, I believe. Is that they're still trying the old ways. They keep saying, oh, we're going to do it like we always did because we were successful before. But now they're not realizing that it's not working. And slowly they went from number 2 to number 3, and eventually India's going to take them over. They're going to keep slipping. So I still think that, Japan has to deal with a lot more of this idea, like the changing over of the systems. Oh, Mosotube, Mosotube. Thanks for lives. Much appreciated. Never been to Japan, but have met lots of Japanese in Vancouver. My issue was, is it almost impossible to befriend them? Oh, okay. Let me see what this is. This is an interesting one. Okay, so Mosotube says, thanks for the lives. Much appreciated. Never been to Japan, but have met lots of Japanese in Vancouver, Canada. My issue was, is it almost impossible to befriend them? Very hard to open up and speak their mind. Oh, yeah. Mosotube. Is it Mosotube or Mosotube? Well, whichever it is. It's hard for Japanese, and there's a couple of reasons. And I just made a video about interviewing a Japanese lady, Emiri-san, and she basically says that when she talks with her boyfriend that he's Canadian, that he's always asking her why, or why do you think that, and she's not able to like, say anything because she never really thought about it or doesn't have an idea. And I think it goes back to the idea of Western way of education, where it's more of a Socratic method. It's the idea of why. You're asking why? Figure it out, why. Where in Japan, a lot of the studies are based on what. They just study the content, memorize, and put it on the test. That's what the entrance exams basically are address. But in the United States, you want like critical thinking, right? That's the big thing. In Japan, again, this is only my opinion, you don't have critical thinking, very, very little. And so what happens is solving problems, like quickly solving problems, being able to analyze something and figure it out, taking risks, because risk taking too is kind of like a quick way of critical thinking. Doesn't exist in Japan very much. And so these people, these Japanese who go over to Canada, they are probably Mosotube or Mosotube, they are probably being exposed to it for the first time, which is great because that's what Japan needs. Japan needs Japanese to be exposed to critical thinking, to risk taking, to being assertive, and they need to bring that back. I call it the salmon theory. The salmon theory is, like salmon, they spawn at the head of the river and then they die and their eggs are left and then they grow up and they swim out to the ocean and then they swim for several years as they get larger and bigger and then they finally come back home to the same river, the same place where they were spawned themselves. They have that instinct and they lay their offspring, their eggs, and fertilize that, and the cycle continues. I believe Japan needs to do that. They need to send, and that's why I was so big about study abroad. Actually, I wrote a book about why study abroad in the United States, which didn't really sell at all. But after I left the university, I thought, I think I know the answer. But nobody ever paid attention. So you can buy this book on Amazon or Kindle if you're interested. If you're non-English speaker, okay. So anyway, yes, the idea of critical thinking doesn't really exist so much. So the idea of independent thinking, critical thinking, and having opinions is not common in Japan because they always studied the what, not the why. And that's why even in Japanese society, a lot of people, the tendency is to agree. The idea of consensus, the group before the individual, which is a really good thing in many aspects too, right? I really believe that somewhere in the middle is ideal. Not being like the United States, so individualistic that I always beat the group. And not in Japan, where most of the time it's the group over the individual. Somewhere in between. When I hired people, I always say, this is what I want, the number one quality. I want a team player who's an independent thinker. So I wanted someone who is going to play with the team, who's going to be part of the team, but also they had to be an independent thinker. Why can't you have that blend? That's what I think, instead of Japan, America, you have somewhere in between. And that's where I believe that is the best, the so-called the sweet spot. So getting back to your Mosotube or Mosotube is that, yes, it's hard because many of them don't have an opinion, one, or two, maybe they have an opinion, but they're embarrassed to say it because they feel embarrassed that people will look down or think they're not smart or whatever. So your job, if you want them to open up, is get them to feel comfortable with you, and that whatever they say, you don't say, oh, that's really dumb, or oh, that's not, I don't agree. You kind of coddle. You gotta kind of coddle them at the beginning to let them feel safe, so they can share with you. And once they start sharing and they know that they can trust you, then they'll be much more open, So yes, I believe a lot of Japanese do have opinions, but a lot of them will not say. They will defer to other people or what other people say, or if it's a senior, they're definitely going to defer up, Let me give you an example. In our office, we don't have to wear a necktie anymore from, I think it was, was it May? Or, but I come in, I have my tie on, and I ask my friend next door, one of the colleagues, and I said, oh, he's not wearing a necktie, right? So I said, oh, can I take off my necktie? And he looks around, he does, and he sees, and then he goes, yeah, I think it's okay. He's not wearing it. He knows, but he still told me he had to do the confirmation and check, kind of defer to like making sure, like he didn't want to say, yes, it's okay. He wanted to defer and make sure that everybody else was not wearing a necktie. And then he looked at me and says, yes, I think it's okay. So yes, there's a kind of hesitancy about taking a stand and being so, like, I don't know if the word is decisive, but again, yes, it's hard for them to speak their minds. And I think that's one of the most powerful experiences that Japanese get when they study abroad, is learning about this idea of independent thinking, open-minded, flexibility, speaking your mind, having no opinion. Okay? So thank you, Mosutube. Oh, here's another one. SPCE Ninja. Okay, let's see. I'm going to take this one off here. And thank you for participating here. SP8CE Ninja, what do you think will help break the cycle or the continuation of like-minded thinking? Do you think the need for labor will force the issue of immigration, which may lead to changes in the mindset? Yes, I think that the need for labor will open up the doors. However, it's still going to take a long time. And what the government is doing now is, because they need foreign labor, like whether it's CNAs, who work in the senior homes, or it's like agriculture, they have written different types of like visas to come in to work. So what they do is they come in under like intern, or they come in as like certain trainee. They give it like these code words that basically mean temporary immigration, temporary visa to work, right? Work visa. But they don't give you something that says, please stay in Japan, make Japan your home. That's what the United States, in a way, you can do, right? Or in Canada also, that if you stay long enough, you put in your time, you can apply for the permanent visa or for citizenship. But in Japan, that's still pushed to the end. So I believe that eventually they're going to have to start going longer and longer. They just changed it. I think it was 3 years until last year, and now it's 5 years, and it can be renewed every year or something. It's still very, very komakai is like detailed, like okay, 1 year. But again, nothing happens in Japan. It's like boom. It's always increments, and sometimes it's super small increments. But the government knows they need a workforce. Imagine 38% of their population is over 60 or over. So most of them are retired already. So what are you going to do? Are you going to just keep older people working? Or are you going to bring in newer people? It's all about the diversity. Japan doesn't realize they need diversity. I mean, they talk about it, but nobody really does anything. But they talk about it like, oh yeah, tayose, we need, it's just a dance. They need to take it seriously. But so yes, answering your question, I think the need for labor will force the issue of immigration, and it will lead slowly though. Now you have to remember, I believe, this is Mike Matsuno's opinion, Japan mind is still sakoku. You know what sakoku is? The new Shogun movie out that's on Hulu or something. That whole idea was during sakoku, or the Tokugawa era, when Japan went to isolation for 60 years, I think. 1603 to 1858, I think it was, when the black ship came and Perry came and it opened Japan up, right? So, but until then, the mind was nobody in, nobody out. And that's sakoku. Japan is still in a mild form of sakoku mind. That basically, we don't want foreigners to come in and take over our land or stay too long. And, Japanese can go out, but a lot of them, not that many go out. So basically, that's the idea of sakoku mind. And that's where Japan still is. And I make a joke about it and people laugh. But I believe inside they're thinking, oh yeah, Mike, you are close to what's actually happening. But nobody says that. Okay? So yes, sakoku mind is still here, and it's going to take a long, long time for the change. Even the word immigration, the government doesn't use the word immigration because it's such a powerful like it's a trigger for a lot of older Japanese. They don't want immigration. So the Japanese then, I mean, the Japanese government then works around it with by giving it names, trainee or intern, or do things. They don't want to say anything about immigration because there's such a kind of a pushback when they come to that. But they're going to have to deal with it eventually, right? And yes, with immigration, there's good and there's bad, and there's negative parts that are going to come. I think I said in a previous live before is that recently there's been crime, of course, by Japanese, but also there've been like some foreign interns or foreign workers here that have been caught. It's just recently there was, I think, a Chinese guy just last week, and about 3 weeks ago there were two Vietnamese that that were caught, and so yes, and so but then again, then the conservative Japanese say, look, they bring in crime, they bring in drugs, they bring in prostitution or whatever. And so that's why it's a constant battle, and that's why Kishida and his government are always doing that little dance by not really saying immigration. But again, going back to what I was saying earlier, is that Japan has never welcomed and said, please come and make Japan your home. Had they done that, I think the whole game would be different. But again, sakoku mind. You don't want people to come. You want them to come, travel, enjoy Japan, study maybe, work for a while, but go home at the end, right? So there's still that type of thinking, and so very different from, let's say, the United States or even for Canada. So I think Space 8 CE Ninja, it's going to be a long time yet. It is happening, but again, glacial speed, increments, small increments, until there's a huge need, until one day that the economy starts to fall, until the yen maybe goes up to 250 yen, if it ever did, it's going to be only small increments. So thank you very much, Space 8 Ninja. Oh, quietly wandering. Okay, let's bring up quietly wandering here. I noticed the difference between my Japanese friends are international and those that are not. The internationals are more receptive to think out loud about what is not written in front of them. Yes, quietly wandering. Exactly. Because they have been exposed, whether they studied abroad or they have a lot of international friends in Japan, or they've worked abroad, or they've traveled. They do exist in Japan, but there's so few, because so few have experiences like that. Think about study abroad. I was pushing for study abroad. I thought this was the secret. That 2 ways that Japan had to open. This is the Mike Matsuno theory, was you do it double. One, you send out as many Japanese as you can, but not for the 1 year like they do now. Not just like tasting, like little poo-poos, eating poo-poos, like, oh yeah, this is good, oh yeah, we're having fun. That's not the real study abroad, but better than nothing. In fact, it went from 1 year, they started doing like 2-week programs, and went still better than nothing. But really, so small. I want them to do degree seeking study abroad, meaning that they go abroad, whether it's 2 years or 4 years, and they get a degree. When they go through the real process of that whole, how rigorous it is, they will understand and they will learn. So study abroad, sending as many Japanese out as you can. Of course, that was met with resistance from the Japanese universities. They don't want to lose their best students or good students abroad. They want to be the ones to train them and have them graduate their school and pay their tuition, right? So of course, there was resistance there. The other was immigration. You let more of the best and the brightest in. I keep telling even my company now, I said, if you need computer skills, go to India. There's a whole bunch of people who are unemployed who are probably brilliant, but everybody worries that if they come, who's going to take care of them? There's language problems. Yes, there's all of that, but you got to start somewhere. There's no way they're going to learn Japanese and come. It might be one, but maybe you need 50. And so, you can only do so much before they come, and then you need to have set up a support network, whether it's language training, it's help, it's housing, it's food, whether you have to get certain kinds of food or halal or whatever it is. You have to figure it out. But I think it's due to lack of experience and lack of knowledge that a lot of Japanese companies don't even know where to start, and they're figuring, oh, that's so troublesome, like better just to hire Japanese. But then they hire Japanese who have no IT skills, who have just got a regular 4-year degree, and then they're going to train them in their IT program. I mean, to learn that stuff, I cannot believe a slower way to do things than what's presently happening in Japan, right? So yes, getting back to quietly wondering your question. Yes, the students who have experienced abroad as well as a lot of international friends are very open, especially when they're with the foreigners. They enjoy that freedom. They enjoy sharing their opinions and having an opinion. It makes them feel much more confident that because in regular Japanese society they still have to hold back. They can't be like they are with foreigners. You almost have to have like slightly two different personalities. You switch back and forth. You see a lot of Japanese when they're in English, how dynamic and assertive they are, and then they go into Japan. Remember what I said back in another live? One of the Japanese professors told me 40 years ago, Mike, ware ware Nihonjin, we must conform. We Japanese have to conform to be Japanese. I still think this kind of still exists. So, like someone like me, I try to be my same. I'm a little bit more Japanese when I'm speaking Japanese. As far as in the office, I'm very respectful, hold my hands a certain way and, bow a lot. But basically, my personality is the same. But for Japanese, I see a very, very distinct change for most people because it's hard to be both, because the expectations are very, very different. So, the international more receptive. Yeah. So anyway, getting back to quietly wondering, exactly right, and that's great that if you can encourage those people who are coming. Those Japanese who have international experience. It's actually refreshing for them to be with foreigners. I think it's refreshing that they can be. I think that's who they are or they want to be. So it's sad that you have to suppress or stifle parts of you that you want to be. But yes, that's how I think it is. So thank you very much for that question. Are there any other questions? Let's see. So yeah, so I feel sorry sometimes for the Japanese, especially those who want to have more of an open international type of environment, that it's still very limited. And like I said, ware Nihonjin, they have to be Japanese. So that's kind of what is happening. Are there any other questions that you folks have? Okay, Aryo Gomo Omedeto on the K-sub. Oh, thank you, Aryo. Yeah, I hit 10,000 subscribers. Thanks to all of you. Much appreciated. Thank you very much, Aryo Gono. I didn't pay that much attention because it was so slow, but slowly. And I've tried doing lives. I don't know if this is a good idea. Maybe there's only like 5 of you out there, but I thought it gives kind of a forum because I hope people will write and be part of this. And then I do a couple of interview styles where I interview people who are related to Japan. I call them global locals. I do that kind of video. And I still have a couple of the regular videos, but kind of hard it's kind of busy, right, to do all of them. But okay, so thank you. Oh, Daddy YouTube, let's see. Daddy YouTube, hi, I'm Canadian, got here to Japan in 1990s, now have 20 employees on my 2 because Japan in 24 is much cheaper to live than the West. People will come. Okay, that's what I was thinking, that at least for when we talk about the idea of global nomads and things, that no one talks about coming to Japan. They go to Thailand, they go to Bali and things. Japan has never been on the map, but maybe there will be because now it's cheaper. Daddy YouTube, I hope that sounds like you're successful. You have 20 employees and a construction company, and construction is still booming in Japan, of course. It's much cheaper. And yeah, with the yen rate, think of it. It's like, now everything's 40%, 30-40% off. Everything is cheaper. So whether you're going to do a company, if you can, or if you're going to be a global nomad, Japan could be an option for you. There are different rules, and maybe it's not as cheap as Thailand or Bali. However, if you live like a lot of the Japanese, or like myself, it's not that expensive. I actually spend way more money when I go to Hawaii, which is my hometown, versus Japan, and I'm paying yen. This is not even, but if I go by dollars, then it's much, much cheaper to be in Japan. So yes, as Daddy Tube says, that in 2024, hopefully they will come. Well, the tourists are coming definitely, and I don't see the yen dollar rate changing in the near future. There's too much happening, and people are worried now. It was at 160, it went over 160 last week, and they think, well, now it's before it was like the cap was 150, right? And then it was 160, and now it's 170. So it's really hard to slow that down. Once it starts gaining momentum, it's actually kind of scary for Japan. And since I make yen too, that's not good. But what can you do? So just stay in Japan or go to travel to countries like Indonesia or maybe Korea that the yen rate is still decent. Cannot go to the United States, right? Just because it's so painful to pay that much more, right? Okay, thank you, quietly wondering. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. Yes, the younger internationals prefer to live in a foreign country, while the older ones would like to stay and change Japan. Yeah, well, I hope that works both ways. Younger internationals, that they have more opportunities to live abroad. And some of them, I still believe Japanese are more like salmon. Like a lot of others, like for example, who go to America, they end up just living in America. But I believe Japanese, there's something about being Japanese that they all want to come back. There's an expression, right, that they say, I want to end up dying on my hometown tatami. There's some expression in Japanese that they want to end up, and they want to end up in Japan, and that's where they want to die. I think Japanese have a much more close connection to Japan. So even if they go abroad, they want to eventually come back. But yes, I highly suggest and hope that a lot of young people will go abroad, because the whole salmon theory is that, oh, I never finished my salmon story, right? Sorry. So the idea of salmon was that when they go abroad, I mean, it's like they go out to the ocean and they learn everything, and then they come back like salmon. And when they lay their eggs is their knowledge and their know-how and their mindset of what they learned when they were abroad for how many years. And then that gets transitioned down into Japanese society. At the same time, you bring in immigration, which also is another layer. So you hit them with the 1-2 punch. Immigration and returning Japanese who have worked or lived and studied abroad for, hopefully it's a longer period of time. A lot of people who go to study abroad, that's great. Even degree seeking, that's better. But still, I believe you need to work in the society in America or Canada or Australia, wherever you go, to really understand how the people think. Because no matter what, university is still a bubble. It's great, but it's still a really nice bubble. But going out to work, until you work in a country, I think you really don't understand deeply how it runs and how it works. So yes, 100%, if you can work abroad and you can live for a while, and then, whether you stay or you decide to come back. But I believe in the salmon theory. Actually, Taiwan did something like this with it was a government strategy, which was brilliant, I thought. Back in, I think, 1950s, or when Taiwan was just starting. I remember Taiwan was they were not well off in the 1950s, 60s. They sent all their promising academics to the United States to get their doctorate and PhDs. And then they ended up getting jobs there. And they ended up working there and putting in a career, 30, 40 years. But when they retired, not all, but many of them came back to Taiwan to lead universities in Taiwan and to try and do that salmon theory, where they brought back all of that know-how and knowledge and then release it into Taiwanese society and culture. So yes, there is a strategy to that. I hope Japan will use more of that, So thank you, quietly wondering. Let's see. Here's one from Lowrider Films. I live in Japan, but from Hawaii. Yay, just like me. And most of my work is in Hawaii, but also Japan. Japan has much higher quality of life than a lot of places. Oh, is that right? Okay. I've lived in Alaska for a while, went to school in Oregon, but I don't know how, as far as quality of life. That's good to hear. That could be a good sales point for people to come in, maybe live in Japan. Maybe Japan should start also bringing in, right now the aim has been more for like laborers or people working in CNAs and trainees and interns. They haven't really targeted more of like, let's see, like in America, maybe some IT people or computer, because they kind of compete, right? Salary and just scale, and you got to learn a new language maybe, and all that, right? So people, they're not, but maybe in the future, if the quality of life is high, maybe they can target people in Hawaii or in the United States or Western countries also, to bring them, as well as of course Southeast Asia or wherever in the world, India, wherever, bring them in. I would hope that, because that's the only path that Japan really has. They can't continue the way, unless they want to decrease their population. If they want to do that, then they're on the right path now. It's just that they won't have enough people paying the tax to, Social Security and all that to continue in the future. So I think that's one of the problems. But yes, that's nice to hear that they have a higher quality of life. Yeah, I'm happy in Japan. I've been in Japan total over 30 years, and Japanese have always been nice. Yeah, sometimes having a Japanese face and being American, it has its little struggles, but overall I'm really, people are just nice, and because I speak some Japanese, it makes it easy. I just started playing pickleball, so yesterday, third time I'm playing at the gym. It's super hot, right? It's like 95 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like, and then there's no air conditioning. It's like, it was really hot. But, I was talking to the people from the community, everyone's just really nice. Everyone's really helpful too. Everyone knows, okay, when you talk about inching, denching, everybody knows what you're supposed to do. So like when we finish pickleball, everybody jumps in to help. In America, they do this too somewhat. But in Japan, it's a full, all hands on deck, right? People don't just leave. People all stay to the end and they clean up, and then they put the nets away and they help the coach and all that. And I go like, oh, that's nice. That's really nice that, you know your role, and everybody's going to be there, and everyone just does it. So there is a really good side to the idea of Team Japan, right? Now the reverse of that is you want to have independent thinkers, and you want to be able to be risk takers and that. And so are the two so polar opposites that they cannot? I believe you can be an eclectic combination depending on the case, depending on the situation. But sometimes you should be an independent thinker, and sometimes you need to be a team player. It goes back to why I used to hire people that were team players but were independent thinkers. You need that combination. I think that is the key to success. Again, that's the Mike Matsuno's opinion. Let's see. Okay, anything else? Okay, so I'm going to I'm close to the end of the hour. I'm going to, just a couple more things. No, I think there are a couple more things I had to talk about, but the stars are too long. But basically it's about critical thinking. Excuse me one second. About critical thinking, that because of the lack of critical thinking, it's hard for people to make changes, or to think that, oh, we should do this a different way. Or like, I like to think that I'm like the director of the continuous improvement, where I'm always thinking of how can we make this better? How can we make this a win-win? How can we make this mutually beneficial? You want everyone to win. What's so hard about that, right? But again, I think it's a critical thinking skill you need to have that, to be able to say like, oh, okay, how can we make this work for both sides and things, So how do you get that into the Japanese society? Well, every Japanese student should read this book, but and there is a Japanese in Kindle, but again, basically I talk about assertiveness, small talk, things that I think are not common in Japan. There are people who have it, good at small talk, but most people don't. Assertiveness, that's definitely not one of the strong points of Japan. Risk-taking, was it Hofstede? He was a Dutch researcher. He did the IBM, the big study. And one of the 4 things that they were studying was risk avoidance, or risk, to avoid risk. And they did a scale. And the most avoid risking country in the world was Russia at number 1. And guess who was number 2? Japan. The United States was somewhere in between. And guess who was on the bottom, meaning that they were the most biggest risk takers. And it's, if you look at the world, you can kind of guess, right? It usually was people of Chinese descent who had left China, for example. Maybe China is up there now. I don't know. This was done like 30 or 40 years ago. But like Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, they were the, and then you can see, right? A lot of them have their own little businesses, a lot of small businesses in Taiwan or Hong Kong when you go. So, yes, risk taking is a big thing. Let's see. Oh, somebody wrote that Tawada-san said, "I just hate Kyoto people. They look down on me and all of Japan." Wow. Oh, you know, when I first came to Kyoto for graduate school, they did say something about this too, is that Kyoto people have a pride because they were like nobility, right? Or a lot of them were from nobility. So they kind of have this sense of maybe looking down at people and or thinking that they're better. Yes, I believe that there is this kind of essence, kind of thing. I remember the typical expression. I remember one person told me when, like in Japanese, they say, "Asobi ni kite kudasai," like please come and visit again, and that supposedly when a Kyoto person says like, and then people don't usually take it that seriously. But if you went and you went to visit them again, people would not think anything. But I guess what happened, this is back when I was in graduate school, so what, 30 years ago, that if someone said that to you in Kyoto and you went, they would be like shocked and horrified that you came because that's like rude. That was just like, it was only like words. It wasn't real. Like it was insincere. So that's where a lot of people thought that people from Kyoto maybe are more insincere, or they're kind of, they're kind of more uppity up. I don't know. I'm sorry that you feel that, Tawada-san. I'm sorry that you hate Kyoto people. There are a lot of nice Kyoto people out there too. But anyway, let's see. Next. Yeah, our family love Japan and visit 1 to 2 times many Tokyo, but there has been some web articles spreading strip infection. Yeah, it's interesting you asked this because last week I had COVID and I had never had COVID before. Been vaccinated like 7 times and, quite careful on the train. I wear a mask and I work a lot from home, so I don't, see many people. But what my friends from Japan and Hawaii did write to me was that the strep throat was very contagious and can be deadly. And that's why they told me that I better go to the hospital. And I had gone to the local doctor here. Again, there's levels of medical. So even if you are a tourist and you come here, you might go to the clinic, but the best people, doctors or tests you can do are at the hospital. But it will take you much longer to wait and go through that system. But I go to the local doctor here because it's easy to get medicine. So I asked him, I went on, I think it was Tuesday. And he said, I said, I think I might have some kind of cold. Maybe I need antibiotics or whatever. Well, all he did is stick down my throat and go, oh yeah, you're ready. He gave me antibiotics. He gave me a cough suppressant. He gave me a painkiller or whatever. And I kept taking it. I took it, but I didn't get better. So it was on Thursday. My 2 friends, one from Hawaii, one from Japan, they wrote to me and said, "Mike, strep throat is very contagious now and it's spreading and people die from it. So you better go and check," because I was meeting my classmates from the university. From 40 years, I had not seen them. So I was supposed to meet them for dinner last week. And so I decided I needed to go. So I went to the big hospital in Suito. And when I went, I did a corona test, COVID test, and I did a flu test. And yes, I was positive for COVID last week. So I went because of the strep throat worry, but I did find out I had COVID because I had done one of those antigen, from America tests that my friend had given me. It did expire. It was 1 year old, but people said up to 1 year is okay. And it was negative. That was done on Monday or Sunday. And then Thursday I went and then had COVID. So yes, I have heard of it. So you want to be careful. I haven't heard that much, and I work in a medical company now. I haven't heard that much about strep, but yes, there has been some scare that it's very contagious and it can be deadly for some people. So yes. Let's see. Hello from Osaka. Hi, KA. Martin, I love your book, Mike. Actually, you read my book, Maria. Maria Artemis. Did you? If you read the book, thank you. It was written as soon as I left the university in 2015. I just said, I'm going to write a book. It's not really well written, I think, but basically I was talking about the skills that I think the Japanese need and why they need to go and study abroad. Not only Japanese, I think Korean students, Thai students, I think basically Asian students in general would get a lot out of this book. And it doesn't have to be United States, it could be Canada or Australia, but I think a Western country, and the reason I say that is nothing against study abroad in Korea or in Thailand or wherever, but I think the Asian experience is very different from the Western experience. The Asian experience is more comfortable. There's an Asianness, I call it, that people feel between Asians, and I think there is something there. But when you go to a Western culture from an Asian country or vice versa, it basically turns your world upside down. By turning your world upside down, it puts you in situations that you're actually uncomfortable or unsure. That is where the growth happens, I believe. That's where people get learn and they figure out things, and that's when some critical skills start to evolve. I think critical, and how you learn that you got to be assertive. If you don't ask in America, nobody's coming to tell. No one's coming to ask you. So it's like, I think it's a wonderful experience. It teaches you empathy. It teaches you, that you don't know how other people feel until you walk in their shoes. But when you are a minority in a country, it's a completely different feeling, than when you are the majority. And that alone is huge, I believe, right? So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Maria, for reading my book. So I'm gonna stop here because I got pages and pages and pages, but I don't want to bore you anymore. But I'm happy that a lot of you participated, because that's what this live is for, is kind of to talk. And if some of you answer each other's questions in the comments, that would be great too. But there's one here. I now live in Okinawa and I'm constantly okay. I'm sorry, I missed this one. Let me go back to this one. I now live in Okinawa, so I'm constantly surrounded by of course, Japanese, the U.S. military, and culture in Japan is better and safer and cleaner. Individuality is sometimes used as an excuse. Interesting, yeah. Japan is better and safer and cleaner. Are you saying, Daddy Tube, that individuality is sometimes used as an excuse by Americans? To be individual? Okinawa would be a great place to be able to see the differences. When I was training down in Okinawa for my company about a month, I loved being there because it reminded me a lot of Hawaii. There's some kind of island feeling, the way people walk, the way they dress, the way they wear rubber slippers, and yeah, there's a lot of Filipinos who have immigrated to Okinawa, and there's a lot of course, you have expats there, and so I felt a lot like, wow, this is like, yeah, it's the Hawaii of Japan, really. So, but anyway, I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to study. Recently, they've been having problems, right, with military personnel who have taken advantage of Japanese girls, taking them underage, taking them to their, I guess, on base, and then have done what I guess sexual abuse, I guess. So, and then I don't know why, but this is interesting, is that the Okinawa police who knew about it did not tell the Okinawa prefecture about this. And they only told the national government. And so then there's this whole thing that Danny Takaki, the governor, who's half American, half Japanese, right? I mean, his father is American. I think he was military. Anyway, he's the governor now, and he protested that how come no one told Okinawa prefecture about all these different cases, because there are more than one or two. And so now finally the government had to apologize and say, we will give you all the, and the police, the Okinawa police also said, yes, we will give you all the information that you need, and bowed. But it was such a big thing, like why? And I didn't understand all the dynamics, but there was like Okinawan police, there was Okinawa prefecture government, and there was national Japan, national, and of course there's U.S. military, and they're all involved. And that is a constant problem and challenge for Japan, the national government, as well as the military. I would have loved to have had a job working between U.S. military and Okinawa Prefecture government. I think that's one of the few times having my face and being having a Japanese name and being an American would be a right position. In my life, there have been very few places that I felt that I finally found my spot. It wasn't until I became the International Center Director for the University in Osaka that when I went out for conferences and I was representing our university and I was a native English speaker and I could sell and I was assertive, that I finally thought I found my spot. Having a Japanese face, having a Japanese name, being a native English speaker was a perfect way to represent our university. I also think that same idea would work between military, in U.S. military and Okinawa Prefecture or Okinawa Police Force or whatever. Please hire me, Okinawa Prefecture or U.S. military, if you want. That's the job I want because I think I could actually help, and I think I kind of fit in between. I'm kind of like in between. I know both sides quite well. I think I would be kind of. Sometimes it's. Let me give you an example. When I was playing pickleball, I was talking about like yesterday. Everybody was super friendly to me, and a lot of them were English speakers, which you will never know. But when they heard that I was from Hawaii and I spoke to them in English, some were English teachers, some spoke really well. But it's one of those times that I felt like, again, I'm guessing, but had I looked non-Japanese, I would be harder to approach and maybe not as easy. But because I have a Japanese face and look Japanese, of course I'm Japanese, not nationality, but I have Japanese blood and Japanese features, that everybody felt very easy to come and approach me. So there are times that having this face and living in Japan, it doesn't bring me when we were young, when we went to the disco, all the Caucasian or non-Japanese looking people got the girls. I never did, but there are times that it works, like I say, it's like poker. You cannot change the cards that you have. You can only change the way you play those cards, right? Anyway, sorry, going off track. So Okinawa, yes, I would love to work in Okinawa. I think I've covered. If I missed any of your comments, I'm really sorry. I think I got them all. So I'm going to probably do another live in 2 weeks. If you have any suggestions of what would be a good topic, a topic that would get people to be part of. I know people want to talk about travel and, the best ramen and this. There's too many YouTube videos about those things, and to me, like I'm not a foodie, and I don't wait on the line for a long time, so I don't have the patience for that. But I feel there's enough young people doing that. But I thought, well, this is more of a deeper topic, and maybe being in Japan 30 years, maybe this helps. So if there's a topic that that maybe you think I could do well with, or I could help bring some light to, be happy to. Just please write it in the comments. I'd be happy to try and work on it. So it's now a little after 12. Thank you very much again for joining us, joining me, and joining the community. Thank you, all of you, for your comments and for being part of this. I hope next time we have a lot more participation, but still, the main thing is that we have some kind of forum, and I don't know if I brought any light to any of these topics, but I do want to say that although I was a little critical, I do love Japan still and all the things about it. And the only reason that I'm critical is because I'm rooting for Japan. I want Japan to do well. I really believe it could have been or could still be a superpower someday. Not military-wise, but otherwise. It could be a superpower, a leader. But again, it goes back to the leaderships. They lack certain leadership skills. And I think it comes with confidence. It comes with assertiveness. It comes with presentation skills. It comes with language. That's a big one that I didn't talk about today, about the JET program, about all the things of why the English language program has not been successful in Japan. Is because they're doing the same way, like Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is a sign of insanity. Same thing. And the changes that they tried to bring all were killed along the way by whether it was faculty or whatever it was. So sad. Japan has the potential to be great, but again, a lot of times they trip over their own feet. It's not the outside competition that's that beating them up or tripping them. Many times it's their own systems and the way that they think and they move that they trip themselves. And if they trip yourselves, then no, who's going to help you, right? Oh, anyway, thank you very much, Quietly Wandering. Okay, next time, Quietly, big questions from Australia. Thank you. I hope you guys are doing well in Australia. Tristan, thank you very much. Yes, Japan education is a great. Okay, maybe we'll do English education at the next live, because that one I have a lot to say too, right? And there's JET program. For those of you who are on the JET program, I have so many complaints from them about, and again, you have to remember the JET program was created by the Foreign Ministry, not the Ministry of Education. And those two ministries don't get along. So you can imagine what came out of that. Tamago. I mean, everybody got great experiences, but as far as results. Okay, stick. Mahalo. Thanks, everybody. Have a great time. Have a great weekend. Take care. Again, we're in a heat wave. A lot of people going to the hospital in Japan, especially in Tokyo. They're hitting up close to the 40s degrees, which is close to 105, I guess it is. Anyway, it's not good. But again, Japan goes through this every year. But they said this year was going to be extremely hot. And there are some of you, like I have my friends' daughters who are coming in August. If you can, go to Hokkaido. Don't come to Honshu. Save Honshu for another time, because it's going to be miserable unless you love humidity. If you love humidity, please come. But if you don't, stay away, because there is no escape except your hotel room with air conditioning. If not, go to Hokkaido. Hokkaido is still hot, and there's slight humidity sometimes, but it might be 30 degrees, 31 degrees, but it's more of a dry heat, so it's still bearable. But also remember, as I did say in a previous live, some hotels, the cheaper hotels, the smaller hotels, may not have air conditioning in Hokkaido or Sapporo, because until recently, they didn't need it. Because of global warming and change, weather change, now there's maybe 2 to 4 weeks that Sapporo or Hokkaido needs air conditioning. They don't have the facilities because they never needed it before. So just be also forewarned of that you might want to, before you make a reservation at a hotel in Hokkaido or Sapporo, you ask if they have real air conditioning, not the fake one. The fake one is like the ones at the lower level business hotels that are older that say we have air conditioning, but it's just wind blowing in, which is not cool. So again, make sure they have real air conditioning. Okay, take care. See you on the backside. This is Mike signing off. ありがとうございました。